Hello. How's it going?
Oh, what up?
For the keen observers in the bunch, you may notice that this week we have Danielle Jones instead of Logan.
I'm not Logan. Sorry to disappoint.
Logan is overworked and a little fatigued from his second vaccine shot, so he'll be working on the back end and sifting through your comments and giving
highlighting the cool ones. So
welcome everyone.
Howdy.
How's your weekend going, Danielle?
Oh, pretty chill. Do you know that series on Netflix? What is it? Love and Robots, all the animated shorts.
I haven't seen it, but I've seen it.
It's so good. So they just released like season 2, which is like the second batch. They're all not related to each other, but we were watching those this morning and they're pretty great. It's like dope animations, short animations designed for adults, like adult content, adult, like deep, interesting plots, but like very short. Super into them.
Nice. I'll have to check it out.
You guys check out. I think Love and Robots, I'm pretty sure, on Netflix.
Nice.
What have you been up to?
Well, it's Saturday. We went to the farmer's market.
Ooh.
We checked on our garden plot, and I checked the mailbox.
Oh, so exciting.
Yeah, tons of things.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well,
congratulations,
another week, another advocacy week.
Congratulations to Kat Sanders there for 6.5 years smoke free. I'm assuming thanks to vaping, or was that also part of the message? All right. So we're just goofing around here till people get a chance to join, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty stuff. Before we do, just a quick reminder, public service announcement for everyone. If you happen to be retweeting certain organizations like ASH.org or Professor Stanton Glantz or maybe some others, just remember that some of us are blocked. So just grab a screen cap and retweet that, and then we can all chime in and make snarky comments about it. I don't know that I've ever interacted with this account, so I'm fairly certain that because Kasa is in my profile, I'm on a list somewhere, and
you're like preemptively blocked.
Yeah, just auto banned somewhere. Anyway.
Yeah, plus use screenshots because you don't really want to give them any more attention either. That's like the kind of interesting thing about this, because the more comments or, replies or whatever that Twitter gets, that populates the algorithm. Twitter is neutral. It's interactions, right? Good or bad, it moves it up to the top of the list. So you can reference them without giving them any attention by using screenshots.
Yeah. And they don't have any, none of these organizations seem to really have an organic following. It's mainly like it's their colleagues and other organizations and maybe a few curious teenagers. But for the most part, it's just sort of within their own, like we have our own observations about the echo chamber within tobacco harm reduction and mainly within vaping.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, these folks have the only difference between their echo chamber and ours is that they have enough funding to do, media buys.
Right.
So anyway.
Use screenshots, kids.
So now that we're here, I guess we can get to the meat and potatoes of it. Welcome everyone to the Kasa podcast update. And I figure we'll start from the top here, as we usually do, with the current calls to action and other things legislative you need to pay attention to. The first thing, of course, navigating through our handy dandy website. Thank you, Danielle, once again.
You're welcome.
Texas, HB 211, which would impose a 5 cent per milliliter tax on e-liquid containing nicotine, has moved through committee, and it is passed the House and is now moving into the Senate. There was I believe this is the one that had a little bit of a dust up. The bill was sort of pulled back because it was the motion was that something was not germane, which I think Texas is one of those sort of single subject rule states, and so they just had to bring the bill back and essentially move forward with the original bill, which was just one subject and dealt with this 5 cent per milliliter tax. And of course, you can read the full engrossed bill linked on our engagement page. Here's the Texas website. It may not look very easy to navigate, but you can find all the versions of the bill that you want here on the site if you are interested in reading it. And of course, we've changed the recipients for these email messages to members of the Senate. So if you live in Texas, reach out and tell your senator to oppose this extra tax on vaping. And even if you think 5 cents per milliliter is a small, manageable tax, you're not wrong. North Carolina and several other states have a 5 cent per milliliter tax. I think North Carolina was maybe one of the first states that had that low per milliliter tax. But it adds up pretty quick. I think it's like $1.50 for a 60 mil. Just double it for, or 50 or 30 mil, double it for 60, and so on. And you know, why should people who are vaping pay extra money for quitting smoking?
Right.
So anyway.
Plus, if you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. If they don't see any resistance on a bill like this, next session, they're going to come up with something even worse.
They will take the whole mile. The next thing we've got going on here is in Arizona, and this is HB 2682. Oh, I thought you were watching me as I was navigating. Here we go. This is not past the House yet, but it is moving toward full, consideration by the full House, and this would implement, as we've described here, a reasonable licensing scheme. And this, it sort of formalizes everything across the state, and has provisions about enforcement and annual compliance checks. If you're a licensed tobacco or vapor retailer, you're going to have one of these annual unannounced inspections, making sure that you're not selling to anyone under 21, and so on. And this also makes a lot of these decisions about tobacco regulations a state level matter. So municipalities still, I think, have control over marketing or shops that are located within a certain distance from schools. And I think there was another thing that it's slipped my mind, but essentially there's sort of this balance between what municipalities can make decisions about and what the state can make decisions about. And ultimately, this is a good thing for both consumers and the industry. A lot of people in the beginning and for several years, and probably still now, believe that the vapor industry is going to be able to self-regulate. Lawmakers and citizens generally don't believe that. And so some form of licensing and regulation is inevitable. And it's better to have the vapor industry and consumers at the table for those discussions, so that we can make sure that first of all, we as consumers continue to have access to these products, and part of that is making sure that vape shops stay open and that the industry can comply with this. We don't want to see that same, the spirit of the Tobacco Control Act basically knocked out any small and medium manufacturers and gave the incumbent tobacco companies the ability to kind of corner the market and protected them from competition. That is bad regulation.
Right.
We want more competition. We want more products. We want more variety. So HB 2682 goes some distance to making that happen.
It's been pretty controversial, though, with some of the membership.
Yeah, we got some responses about this one. I think people sort of misunderstand when they hear the word regulation. I think they automatically jump to just the worst possible scenario.
Right.
I can understand that. I mean, there are certainly some, I think, very, I'm going to use the word libertarian wrong here, but there are some very diehard libertarians out there that, again, believe that the industry can self-regulate. That's just not kind of the political reality we live in, as I explained. But yeah, it's some degree of regulation is a good thing. I mean, neighboring New Mexico, this is one of those tax bills that I don't believe I can't remember. I don't think we were able to support it because it was a new tax, but it was a bifurcated tax, which recognized the difference between the small devices like your, closed systems, your the products, and the difference between those products and open system products, and set up a tax scheme that was basically equitable for everybody. And that was a bill that was negotiated by the industry. And that's, it's absolutely critical. Lawmakers still don't really understand these products. And part of that, of course, has to do with, organizations like, let's just scroll down. Here we go. Here's one of the organizations that likes to fill lawmakers' heads with hysterical numbers and words. And they, of course, are opposed to HB 2682. The funny thing they have circled here is they support watered down and less effective tobacco control measures as a public relations ploy. I only note that because I had seen that as some other criticism lobbed specifically at another company, one that people know. They are international. They sell cigarettes. They also sell a heat not burn product, and they're American friends or subsidiary. I forget which way it goes. But they own a huge chunk of a vapor company. So, but the international company, the international one, I'm trying to be all vague, and it's really making me feel uneasy.
I mean, can we just say the names? We can't say the names.
Sure, Philip Morris,
PMI, right?
PMI. So they I believe were catching some criticism about something specifically, and it's just being a PR stunt,
right?
Which there are examples of this happening in the past, but it's different now. There's a real reason to be out there in the media promoting smoke-free products because we know that they help people who smoke,
right?
And lots of people who smoke are very interested in switching to these products, and it can improve their health. So it's either PR or marketing. Either way, getting the word out is a good thing. So.
Right.
Really quickly to answer Mark's question here, we've switched platforms several times, so we've landed on we've got around 250,000 members. But if I look at some different counts, it's like 300,000. But a lot of those are sort of folks who haven't responded to anything for a while, or they might as well kind of be scrubbed off the list. But we got 250,000 people, so we've been on our way to getting as many people as we need for a while, but we're still not quite there.
Right.
Let's see, Texas, Arizona, and I had in my head a third bill. Two more things. Right. So Wisconsin is in the midst of budget discussions. And just so we're all watching me do this, we have an engagement up for Wisconsin, and I believe I need to update this. So apologies. I did an interview for this yesterday, which is why I'm bringing it up now, and still have not updated this. So Wisconsin just went through a couple weeks of public hearings and meetings about the budget proposal. Contained in this budget proposal is a 71% wholesale tax on vapor products. They're achieving that by folding vaping in with other tobacco products, which in Wisconsin includes things like little cigars, I think roll your own, and smokeless tobacco. And this also includes a ban on vaping indoors in public places and workplaces. No matter what you think about an indoor vaping ban, just remember, number one, vaping is not a public health emergency. Number two, independent business owners and workplaces are free to establish their own indoor vaping policies and enforce it. And that's kind of the way it should be. I understand, look, a lot of people are freaked out about seeing anything that looks like smoking in public. And if you are uncomfortable with that, then, make the decision on your own and don't vape in public.
Right.
But businesses who want to allow their patrons, their employees to stay inside and have a vape instead of stepping outside in the cold Wisconsin winter, they should have that right. And Of course, again, this is in that theme of any of these laws where we treat vaping just like smoking. It confuses people and it sends the wrong message. So anyway, the update for Wisconsin is that the Republican-controlled legislature has decided to pretty much entirely scrap the budget bill presented to them by Governor Evers. And so they, after listening to public comment for a couple of weeks, are taking everybody's comments into consideration, and they will be coming back with a new version of the budget, which they need to get done soon because the budget bill has to be passed by June 30th.
Okay.
So yeah, the new budget takes effect at July 1st. And so that should be moving quickly, and we'll see. It's not clear whether or not there will be more opportunities for people to engage. But despite the fact that I have not updated our call to action, we are keeping an eye on this. Kristen Noel Marsh, who's usually running the back end on these things, lives in Wisconsin, and so we have somebody, of course, personally invested in the outcome here, and we'll keep that updated as we go. One more. Oh yeah, the most important one. So I'm going to get my screen back up here, and just so you can get the feel for how easy this is, we are going to Maine. Sorry for the silence. So Maine has a flavor ban. Did I actually click it? Okay. So Maine has a flavor ban that's moving through the legislature. There was some hope that it would get tied up in the committee that it was just in. I believe that was a Joint Committee on Health. Oh, and I spelled health wrong. Joint Committee on Health and Human Services. It is still listed as sitting in this committee, but the committee did hear this, and they did have a vote on it, and it is recorded as divided, which essentially means not unanimous. And the report that comes out of this, I guess, will have both of those sides, and then it will go to the House. The last I heard anything about this, it was moving to the House, and so we've sort of upgraded this engagement for everybody to send messages to their representatives. So if you live in Maine, LD 1550 does have a little bit of steam behind it, and we could use your help to get this stopped. And when I say help, I mean participating in this call to action and sending an email. And if you're an eager beaver, you can go to the state's website and look up your representative's phone number and give them a call as well. All of the talking points that we use for why a flavor ban should be shut down are great to use on your phone calls. So that is Maine, and I believe this sort of ends the reading of the legislative rundown, but just one more. I wanted to check in on Minnesota because I have updated this a few times, and this is still, an ongoing issue. Again, this is a budget bill, and I regrettably tend to lose track of these, as a lot of people who don't work in state houses as lobbyists or lawmakers do. We still have the contact information for the Taxes Conference Committee. And so if you're in Minnesota, could definitely use some help getting messages to the committee and urging them to keep the vapor tax out of the budget. This is a 95% wholesale tax that's already active in Minnesota, but would be expanded to include devices, hardware, which, as any of the people who are probably watching our podcast know, the open system products can cost quite a bit. And then you're going to add 95% on top of that. So that's pretty outrageous and unnecessary, and that's in Minnesota. So I think that covers it.
Excellent. The more you know.
So the one thing, so really quickly, one of the things that was not on our blog post that I figured was good to get started with was an email I got from the Drug Policy Alliance today. And I'm just going to make sure that this is big enough that people can read it. So one of the things that they point out, this is a completely different issue, by the way, but related. And the quote that I picked up on was that the drug war inappropriately brands all people who use drugs and people suspected of using drugs as lazy, irresponsible, and not deserving of any public assistance. So specifically, they're talking about things like the SNAP program or, welfare checks or anything like that. When it comes to cigarettes, the reason why this is so related to us is there are people who are denied employment because of their smoking or even nicotine
use. Yeah.
And this is another thing that the other thing that's really important is the perception of people who smoke. In the 50s and, way back in the day, smoking was a bit of a status thing, and it showed that you were sophisticated and whatever. Now it is a sign because of all of the campaigning that's gone on. When we hear things like, people who smoke are poor, I think for a lot of people, or it used to be, I don't know if it's still the same thing, but it's this notion that smoking itself makes you poor, which is not really how this works at all. No. The reality of the situation is that people living in low-income communities, they are facing more intense day-to-day stressors. They may be dealing with past trauma. All of these things are things that contribute to why a person might turn to substance use. And cigarettes are really the most accessible kind of drug out there.
Right.
And with the added benefit of not making you inebriated to the point that you can't operate heavy machinery.
Right.
Anyway, all of that to say, all of the drug war tactics that were used to stigmatize drug use and marginalize people, they're the same tactics that are used in tobacco control. And, they're not the exclusive tactics. I don't want to, misrepresent that. There are certainly other strategies that are employed, but this is certainly used very heavily. It's the most visible and one of the most memorable things about the messages we receive about smoking and other tobacco use. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there as a bit of a reminder of just how, parallel and intertwined conversations about tobacco and the drug war are. So,
yes.
Thoughts?
I mean,
added details.
No, I see what you're saying. And I actually find it a little frustrating sometimes. I'll see, members from our community who feel very strongly everything you just said about tobacco use and, people who smoke and things like that. But sometimes there's a disconnect between seeing that with substance use as well, and sometimes there's this idea that's been ingrained in us, right, by tobacco control or the drug warriors that says that, because you chose to do this, right? You made the decision to, use a drug or pick up a cigarette, because you did that, you now no longer have any respect. You don't deserve empathy. You don't deserve dignity. You chose to do something that we all told you all throughout school was going to kill you or was really bad for you, and you didn't listen to us. So now you deserve everything that happens to you. They do, the same thing. And so for people to not necessarily recognize that these two things are intertwined and very related, that they are brainwashing society to feel the same way about people who smoke as they do people who use, other substances or drugs. I kind of feel like I wish people would see that a little bit more, because if it's not true for us, it's not true for them either, right? Like it doesn't, and there's a lot of people in our community who fall into both groups, right? There are a lot of people, whether in recovery or still struggling with substance use or have it, use substances by choice and don't feel like there's an issue. There's a lot of overlap, in these two. And I hope that people can kind of open their minds a little bit and see that it's applicable to both, scenarios, both groups of people. And it's not right either way, because by and large, the majority of people who smoke definitely start smoking when they are underage for the most part, right? That's what statistics tell us, usually under 18, and the groups that are like, oh, defend the children. I started smoking when I was like 17. And a choice that I made then, while, I didn't really understand the repercussions that would follow me into adulthood. That was a choice that I made then. And to assume that, to equate that as a choice as an adult, right? That like, well, you deserve what happens to you now. I have fundamental problems with that. And I think that people need to embrace empathy much more widely than they do, now. Empathy and dignity, really. Because just because you've even, any decision that you make, whether or not it's something that somebody else agrees with, that doesn't make you subhuman. That doesn't, with a few exceptions, right? If you go around mass murdering people, fine. Okay. All right. Maybe we can talk about that. But, something like this, it's not accurate. It's not fair. And it's extremely, condescending, patronizing, and evil, I think, to do that to people.
I think you checked off all the words. So
that's my soapbox.
I only, just to add, I am one of those people in recovery, or someone who has dealt with substance use issues in my life. I went through treatment, and there is certainly a lot of talk about the effect of stigma on people. Mm-hmm. And that is consistent with my experience, certainly. And, I don't need to tell you that it's true, but it is. And it certainly delayed my seeking help by at least a year. Right. I was afraid that I would be followed by the cops, if I went to, an AA meeting or something. I was afraid that going to a treatment center was essentially admitting to a crime, right. All of these things. And so it took an extra year for me to make the decision to get help. And now, just sort of applying that to vaping, with all of the stigmatizing that's been done to vaping, mm-hmm. there are now millions of smokers out there who are just, well, I'll stick with the devil I know. Right. This vaping thing is, I'm already kind of the social outcast right. here. I don't need to be pushed out any further because I want to vape. Right. So yeah, there's real harm that comes from these types of campaigns and perspectives. So figured we'd start the discussion off on a happy note.
Yeah, guys.
Well, then moving quickly right along, we'll talk about briefly the End Ends Act.
So clever. It's so meta, Alex.
It's ridiculous. But the name is stupid, but I'm sure that the article is great, from Alex Norsha
of course.
in Filter. Really quickly here. I have not seen the current version of this, but would certainly direct everyone to check out Alex Norsha's our article on this on Filter, and we link to it in our blog this week. But this is a 20 milligram of
per
nicotine
milliliter
per milliliter cap on vapor. Right. That's pretty much all it is. And this is, of course, I don't know. I looked at the bill. This is from last year. Let me make that. Oops, that's the wrong one to make bigger. There we go. So this is from 2019, 2020. And as you will read in the article, Congressman Krishnamurthy is just reintroducing this bill. Raja Krishnamurthy from Illinois, who has been an outspoken opponent, very anti-vaping.
Yeah, pretty much.
This is pretty much just...
So this is like zombie bill, right? It won't die. It keeps coming back each year, so...
Not a zombie. It just keeps getting... I'm sure it will continue to be reintroduced. This happens a lot. I think Dick Durbin has released or reintroduced the same bill for 2 or 3 sessions in a row. In New York, we have some ridiculous bills that keep getting reintroduced. Everything from an all-out ban to different types of flavor bans. I'm sure that the most recent introduction about nicotine pouches will probably be reintroduced over and over again until it gets some takers. So yeah, this bill, I'm just scanning through here. Okay, here we go. European Union, United Kingdom, and Israel implemented regulations to cap the concentration of nicotine in e-cigarettes, e-liquids to 20 milligrams per milliliter. Okay, So they did reference at least
UK.
that aspect of how the UK and Europe and Israel regulate these products. Of course, all without mentioning that all of the success that has
Right.
happened in the UK, and the fact that I just love. I feel like a broken. We should all feel like a broken record saying this, but it's true that there are vape shops in hospitals in
Yes.
England.
Yes.
Not every hospital, but I think there's like 2 or 4. I'm not sure on how many of them there are.
Yeah, they cherry pick the restrictive legislation, but completely ignore the fact that Public Health England promotes vaping to its citizens and encourages them to. I mean, oh, it's so hypocritical sometimes.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. So anyway, we're keeping an eye on this, and I'm with I think most people with the concerns of the party makeup of our government right now. The concern is that these anti-vaping bills may just get a rubber stamp all the way through Congress.
Right.
There are, of course, some people in the Senate, I think, who are persuadable and are not just going to rubber stamp something like this. So hopefully, I know that as far as tobacco regulations are concerned, Congress itself kind of has to deprioritize these things a little bit. We are obviously in the midst of something with, I think, a lot more immediate consequences that have to be dealt with. So we may not see this bill or Dick Durbin's bill move very far this year. I would not be surprised to see the End Ends Act get through the House. Frank Pallone's bill also got through the House pretty easily last session, and I think he's bringing it back again. So we'll see how things progress through the year, but I'm not super concerned about this at this point. Probably the best thing to happen with this is we can have an open and critical conversation about the value of a nicotine cap,
right?
Which is this is also playing out at the state level,
right?
So that is the End Ends bill. Any thoughts on that, Danielle?
I mean, nicotine caps are so complicated, right? Because you've got, I know that there are some members of our community who are going to be like, oh, that'll, get Juul out of the way. So yeah, that sounds good. Or, some people say, well, I don't use, anything above 20 milligram per milliliter. So, I mean, what do I care? I personally am a 3, I'm way below that threshold. But I think it's really easy to only, see how this might affect you and then kind of stop there. You know what I mean? Like, oh, well, me and most of my friends will still, not have a problem. I don't use that. But I think the tragedy in that, pathway and that thought process is that what you're not taking into consideration is people who smoke. For all of the faults that Juul has, I don't particularly like them or respect them as a company, but I will go on record saying that they make a good device. They make an excellent device for people who smoke. I believe that. And if someone who smokes walked up to me and says, what should I try? I would absolutely send them with a Juul, because I think that is an excellent, at least starter project or device for somebody to, start using. It's easy, it just works. You don't have all these liquids and these coils and these, cleaning things and cotton and all of this different stuff. And, for all of the pros and cons about salt nicks, it is a sensation that is more like smoking. So I think that they make a good product. And to this day, I would still recommend it to people. So when you say like, oh, well, a nic cap doesn't affect me, people who smoke may, especially initially, a lot of people in the community started at like 24 milligrams when they first, were quitting smoking. And a lot of people need that. And so, to say that, well, me as an experienced, probably hobbyist vapor at this point doesn't need 20 milligrams or above. There are people that do, especially people that are not yet in our community or who have not yet made the switch. And I think it is very nearsighted to say that this is fine or it has no effect, or, to think that we can just trade, oh, well, if we let them have this, then maybe they'll back off. You're negotiating with crazy people. Like that's my view on, issues with tobacco control. It doesn't, you would think in a normal world that okay, if we were to support this bill, then maybe they'll back off on a flavor ban, for example, or taxes or something like that. That's not going to happen. We live in the upside down when it comes to tobacco control. They're going to take this and then they're going to come for your, lower, or your flavors, or your lower nicotines, or your open systems, or, this is not, you're not negotiating with rational people here. So I am always going to oppose the nic cap. I know there's a lot of people who think, that it might be reasonable, but I am staunchly always going to oppose it for those reasons.
I think just to kind of illustrate the insanity, I don't know what bill it was in. It might have been a state bill, or it may have just been in somebody's op-ed. But recently somebody was talking about giving FDA the authority to regulate nicotine content in e-liquids down to non-addictive levels.
Oh no.
And I mean, anybody who, well, not anybody, because there are a lot of people out there who are buying products on the underground market and they're not actually getting the full description of what it is or what the variety is. But for those of us who've been doing this for a few years, we already know you have your choice of nicotine strength already.
Right.
So there's really no need to codify what the industry already offers, which is
right.
If you
could do 0.
You can do your step down program. You can start at 3 milligram if you want. I mean,
that's what I did.
Yeah. So again, the beauty of this is that we get to listen to our own bodies and we get to come up with our own strategy. And if we want to keep vaping nicotine, we can keep vaping nicotine. If we want to take it down to 0 and just vape the flavor, we can do that too. I don't need Congress to set that up for me. It's already in the product.
No, we most certainly do not, and also what exactly is a non-addictive level in vaping? What exactly is that? Is that like 1 milligram? I mean, what they're doing with very low nicotine cigarettes, right? From what I understand is they're taking out like 95% of the nicotine, right? And calling that like non-addictive levels. Well, what do you start with to do that with vaping? And does that leave it to the point where it is then completely ineffective? Because we know, right, that after you've been a person who has smoked, you do, I don't like to use the word addicted. I disagree with that word, and I can rant on that for a minute if you want, but I don't like the word addicted. There are those of us who have a dependency on nicotine, or who really get a lot of benefits out of using it, right? And so we, like you said, we want to be able to choose at what level. But if you completely nearly take it out of all products, that's effectively prohibition. That's not, that's not reasonable regulation. That's forcing, in a very coercive way, me to stop doing what you don't like me to do. So no, thank you. Nah.
Yeah, and we have seen research published recently, I think within the past month. Don't quote me on the timing, but there is some new research out there showing that vapor products with nicotine help people who smoke switch completely away from cigarettes.
Absolutely.
Better than non-nicotine e-liquids. I mean, for us, that's just like common sense. Like, we know that this is what we went through.
Exactly. I tried 0. I thought I could do it. I was one of those people that was like, I don't need nicotine. I'm fine. I can do 0. So I did 0, and I couldn't, it wasn't, I quickly learned like, oh, bro, you actually really like nicotine. I don't know if you knew this, but you actually do. And it just doesn't. Yeah, I think it was even mentioned in the the big RCT in the New England Journal of Medicine. They specifically said with nicotine, e-cigarettes. So there's always kind of been this. I've seen it in multiple studies, that e-cigarettes with nicotine, without. I'm sure that probably helps like at least 5 people, you know what I mean? But, and that should still be available, but the majority of people need some level of nicotine.
Yeah. When I switched, I went through, in 2013, the products I had available to me immediately were the Cigalikes. And I actually followed Grim Green's advice. He has a video that I think it's still up. He did an update to it, but the first one is the best. It's so you're ready to take the next vaping step. Mm-hmm. So if any of the new vapors are out there and you want to kind of go back, and I'm sure that the updated one is referencing more current products.
Mhm.
The old one was really good for me, and a company called Smokeless Image. I don't know if they're still in business, but they had their starter pack, and it had the device and the PCC, the personal carrying
Oh,
case,
God.
which was also a charger.
I remember
And,
those.
I was very hopeful that it would like fit naturally in my shirt pocket.
Oh
but,
no, it's like putting a little brick in your pocket.
yeah, it didn't work out so well. But the thing that really kind of blew my mind about that was when I discovered the flavors. I was like, oh wait, I can vape root beer. That sounds amazing. But the problem was that those devices were just not capable of delivering the nicotine that I found out that I really needed. And so even though I was replacing the nicotine, I thought I was still experiencing withdrawal symptoms for about a week or two. And I actually had the nicotine gum satisfied, the 4 milligram nicotine gum satisfied me more than vaping on the cigalikes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, we really do need to have this conversation about, the effect of nicotine on our body based on the delivery mechanism.
Yes, absolutely.
And for me, I mean, whenever I hear these people talking about how vaping has got more nicotine than cigarettes and it's more addictive, to me, that is absolute nonsense. And it is absolutely not consistent with my experience. I think, anyway, I'm going to go down a rabbit hole here if I don't shut up. We can move on to the next topic. But all of that to say, nicotine caps are nonsense.
No.
The conversation that we need to be having is how can we make these products better so they are more appealing to people who smoke?
Right.
And another aside here, I attended a Forest meeting this past week. I forget what Forest stands for, but it's a smokers' rights group out of the UK.
Okay.
And they had Jacob Greer on. For anybody following CASA and in our circles, Jacob Greer is an excellent author. He's written a book about tobacco, the enjoyment of tobacco throughout the years, and of course has some attention given towards vapor products and the controversy. But it's an excellent book.
I've got it somewhere too. If you want me to look for it,
I've got it right here.
We get our matching books out.
So I promise that one of these days we're going to start a CASA reading list or CASA book club.
I want a book club.
This is the book from Jacob Greer, and he was being interviewed by Simon Clark from Forest about it. And one of the things that Simon brings up, I think occasionally or frequently, is this kind of idea that I think a lot of people who vape have, and certainly people in tobacco control have, is this idea that we need to sort of forcibly move people who smoke away from cigarettes into something safer. That's not consistent with this harm reduction approach. And, really the best way to promote this strategy to people is to just kind of say, these products are more enjoyable. That was my experience with switching to vaping. I smoked menthols for probably the last 10 years of my 21 years of smoking. And I had a mint flavored Logic from a gas station. And immediately it was the flavor and just the whole experience. I could sense that I was getting nicotine. It was a much cleaner experience. I could do it indoors. All of these benefits convinced me that switching to vaping was going to be just a much better deal all around than continuing to smoke.
Right.
And so that was my experience of switching to vaping. And I don't see why anybody else should have a different experience. I don't like barking at people and telling them how to act. Every time I hear somebody talk about how they need to go outside and have a cigarette, or I see someone smoking, my first thought is not, oh, you poor undereducated person, you just don't know any better.
Right.
It's my reaction is more just kind of astonishment. It's sort of like watching someone who's not Amish going to work in a horse and buggy. We have cars now. Cars are pretty relatively efficient at getting us from point A to point B. Right. And you should buy a car because it's better.
Right.
But I'm certainly not going to walk up to that person and say, you should switch to vaping. How dare you? Like
No.
that messaging just does not work well.
My quit story actually fits perfectly into this example, and I'm going to condense it. I'll do it quickly. When I was still a smoker when I started working for the first vape company that I worked for, right? I saw an ad on Craigslist for a graphic designer, and I was like, ooh, I smoke. So maybe they'll hire me. I can get an in because I'm like, ooh, I'm your target audience. Try me out, right? So I get hired and I'm working in a vape company and I am smoking. I'm still smoking. I'm working there, but I'm like, these products look dumb. And so I'm just doing my graphic design. Completely true. And everybody who worked at the company was constantly pressuring me. They were like, no, you have to switch. Like they were pretty like, and they meant, these were people in the vape community, right? They meant well, but they were constantly, pressuring me and trying to, cajole me and do all these things. And I just wasn't having it. I was like, you know what? I tried it a couple times just to like kind of, because they kept throwing free product at me. I tried it and it was cigalikes. It was actually like micromizers and things like that. It was like these tiny little, if you remember those. And I hated it. Like I was like, I don't like vaping. This sucks. So I smoked still for a year working at a vape company. I went to my first trade show about a year after working there, and I met so many people who were so happy and so proud and so passionate and so thankful for these products. Nobody, I kind of pretended that I was a vapor at the expo, so I didn't like stand out, but I would sneak out and go smoke still. And it got to the point where I was just listening to these people's stories, and they'd tell them like tearfully, right? This is like 2014, you know what I mean? Like there was still this like huge groundswell of, and there still is, but like this really genuine, authentic, non-commercial at all passion for it. And I just felt so weird. You know what I mean? Like I was like, they're so like, what, and I just seeing their enjoyment and it was, for somebody asking in the chat, it was ECC 2014, I believe, was the first expo I ever attended. And I was like, I think the other thing that helped was that this was ECC when they had a tent. If anybody remembers that show, it was real hot and they put a tent in the parking lot and it was awful. I was in the tent, right? So it was real vapey, right, in the air. And I was still sitting there, pretending with my 0 milligram, like, mod to, blend in. But I think I got like contact nicotine because there's a lot. I know we talk about it's not really in the air and it's probably psychosomatic, but there was just so much, there. I don't know. That was a theory I had at one point, but from what we know about, emissions, that's not really a thing. There's not really that much nicotine in what you exhale. But for what I had my last cigarette at that show because I just couldn't, I could not stand here and talk to these earnest people and try to sell them, my thing or talk to them about this when I'm still running off, smoking. It wasn't pressure, but it was just this sense of like, this works and it's better and they're happier. And like that's what tips me over the edge. People kind of in my ear, like, you should really do this for a year, didn't do anything, but just seeing this joy that everybody had, that's what did it for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So go out, be plentiful and be that example for everyone else. And I think you don't even have to have a conversation with some folks. You'll just change their mind. Just seeing people being successful with vapor products, I think, goes a long way. So anyway, yeah, just wanted to drop that note in there. Was reminded of it, of course, from the smokers' rights people, and enjoyed their contributions to this whole conversation as well. And I think it's important to remind folks that, we really got here because we made this decision on our own.
Yes.
And because we enjoy these products immensely and found that they were much more enjoyable and obviously less harmful than continuing to smoke. And, all of this is about making sure that other people have the ability to make that same decision on their own without people barking in their faces about it. So,
right.
Yeah, that was that. Speaking, are we ready? Can I abruptly change gears here?
Oh, do it.
The other thing that has come up, I guess, within the past month, another we're just shills for Alex Norsha here.
I mean, he's a great writer. What do you want? I'm okay. I'll be a volunteer shill for him.
He is definitely covering this with honesty, which I very much appreciate. But this is a story about IQOS. Again, Philip Morris, Altria in the United States.
Right.
And the big headline here is that now I'm just screwing up my timeline. There's been close to a 43% decline in the past 50 years in smoking in Japan. And most recently, I don't know if it's for that entire 50 years, but the real story about IQOS in Japan is that no major public health or anti-smoking interventions or campaigns have taken place in the 4 or 5 years that IQOS has been sold in Japan. And yet they have captured a huge chunk of the market share. I was trying to find this. The only thing that I saw was, I think I guess it was the sort of quarterly earnings call from Altria, or no, it was Philip Morris. In their report, IQOS is sold in, I think, 10 markets, and across those 10 markets, IQOS has gobbled up 14% of the market share, which is a big deal.
Yes.
Considering that they're going head to head with cigarettes, the
right.
same cigarettes, of course, that PMI makes. But
right.
So when I hear that, we know, or we don't know, but we keep hearing about how when people who smoke are asked, do you want to quit smoking? Something like 70% of them say yes. So, whether or not you think those folks are just sort of, agreeing with the survey taker,
right, saying what they think they want to hear,
or they actually believe it. At the end of the day, even when you whittle those people out, there's still a large number of people who would like to quit smoking. And this is a product that's offering them that opportunity. And there is obviously interest and demand for low risk alternatives. So that's a big story that really isn't getting a lot of attention other than from the tobacco harm reduction space and, of course, from the tobacco industry.
Right.
So good to keep bringing that up. And I really wish I was better at throwing the statistics around. But it is a remarkable decline in smoking in Japan since IQOS has been available. Japan, by the way, where I believe nicotine vapor products, all vapor products are prohibited.
Banned, right? And where the government has a stake in or owns, right? Like tobacco, it's one of those, I don't know what, there's a word for it. I can't remember, but it's where the government actually owns tobacco companies. And they you think MSA money is bad in the United States? Imagine if Raja was personally heavily invested in Philip Morris, for example. We are, they own it. It is a government revenue source, right? And so it's especially and that's probably why they don't have a lot of huge public health interventions, right? Because the government's but we still want the money, though. I mean, that's what I would guess, is that they're not super interested in that if they're making money off of it.
Yeah, I'm not clear on the politics in Japan, but certainly with vapor products being banned, IQOS is sort of the obvious choice for a lot of people. But yeah, you're right. There's a lot of state-owned tobacco companies.
That's the word.
Effectively, I think China is the largest tobacco company in the world.
Right.
So, which China is something people are probably following a lot more closely than I am, but China released or is working on finalizing their own regulations for e-cigarettes, which I think is sort of a hint to a lot of people that China may be allowing for vapor products to be sold or used. I'm not totally up to date on the laws in China, but it is my...
I don't have enough time with the U.S.
Yeah, I have a hard enough time with New York State. So anyway, that was an important story to bring up, and I'm sorry I'm not giving it as much time and attention and detail as I should. But if you'd like to read more, you can read Alex Norsha's article on Filter Magazine. So
do it.
That is that. The other thing, I guess I don't even know how far are we into this. I don't know where's my clock.
We're about an hour in.
Okay, so we're coming up on the end here, but I know you and Kristen were talking about this. And it was the nicotine gum. Right.
This is interesting. It is curious. Yeah.
I think you
show the people.
You know more about this than I do, so I'll let you talk.
So there's an interview that I would, recommend that people check out. But essentially, this is kind of an interesting look at the history of nicotine gum. And it's kind of, a lot of us think of the history of nicotine gum as, in the United States and pharma companies, right? Like that's where we sort of think of it. But in actuality, nicotine gum wasn't invented by pharma companies. Very much like vaping, it was invented by a dude who was looking for a nicotine substitute that wasn't cigarettes. Basically, he was looking for something that was a little less harmful, but he could still continue consuming nicotine. Right there you go, Alex. Show that thread.
I love this. It's anybody who was vaping from like 2007-ish, 2008. Well, a lot of the European folks were vaping in 2006 until like 2010, right? That this it tasted terrible and was too complicated.
True facts.
That's the experience that most people
facts.
had.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so essentially, a lot like the invention of vaping by Han Lick, he came up with something. And initially, it was actually, he tried, something unflavored, I believe, and thought it tasted awful. So I believe the first flavor that he settled on for nicotine gum was like a chocolate, mocha flavor, because that was essentially satisfying and tasted good. And it's really interesting because when you go through this story, it comes across that actually, when he created nicotine gum, my understanding is tobacco control actually hated it. They thought it was terrible. Does that sound familiar? We only know the history as tobacco control loving nicotine gum and thinking that every smoker and their mom should use it, and thinking that that's the only thing that should be promoted. But it's really interesting to see that the history of it sounds a little like vaping to me.
Yeah, it's one of there's a phenomenon here, I'm sure, and actually I know David Sweener from Canada has brought this up several times at conferences about disruptive technology and the effects that it had. Seatbelts in cars were originally demonized because it was either they were decapitations, I think was the big fear.
Oh yeah,
of
they
course,
were more dangerous.
When until seatbelts got the shoulder strap, there was that problem of if you're in like a 35 mile an hour or faster crash, your body's folding over in a very unnatural way. Right. So yeah, there were some injuries associated with that, but everything from I think microwave ovens, other appliances, and of course cell phones. People are still worried that they're giving them some sort of a disease or cancer, right, or other things. So all new technology or innovations like nicotine gum or vapor products are sort of approached with this attitude of we got to kill it with fire, and then eventually. It's unfortunate that we have to continue sort of waiting these things out.
Right.
It's good. More research, all for it. Absolutely. Sure. But that's not what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with an aggressive movement trying to squash these products before they can do the most good. So anyway, there is this pattern, of course, that people are. It's more than skeptical. It's this anti attitude against new technologies and things like that.
Exactly. No, I think it's fascinating. And to me, I think a story like this should give people hope, right? Like not hope that vaping gets picked up by Pfizer and then it's accepted. I'm not interested in that kind, but I think that this should give you a little piece of hope that like eventually a lot of times these things do prevail. Like it is really difficult right now. It is probably the worst that it has ever been right now for vaping in the vape community. I understand that, but I am the type of person that thinks that, this is a war. It is not, one battle. And I eventually believe that these products, whether it's 5, 10, 20 years from now, will be embraced the way that some of these other technologies eventually, look at history. Like there's always, like you said, burn it with fire, and then eventually people get used to it. So I do believe that will happen. But I do think that we have to, basically hold the line through this difficult time. And so to me, that just sort of gives me hope that, eventually people can see reason.
Yeah, I'm burning a candle for optimism that within the next 6 months, we're going to see a flavor other than tobacco approved for
Right, for
e-cigarettes.
PMTA, yeah.
Yeah. And I am also, again, burning that candle for some sort of bottled e-liquid also being approved within the next year.
Right.
I just, again, that's not like investment or business advice. I am neither of those types of advisors. And it is just strictly my own. It's kind of a gut feeling. It's more hope than anything else.
A lot of hope. Yeah.
But
rebellions are built on hope, Alex.
Yeah. And I certainly don't have any connections within FDA. But I think, people who dedicate their lives to serve public health and improve lives. I think there are a lot of those people working at FDA and other government agencies, and they have read the science. They've seen all of the good that's going on. And I think that they want to be able to authorize these products for market.
Right.
So hopefully that's the first step in really turning things around.
Right. And we've seen like at least 2 now op-eds from like notorious tobacco controllers that are starting to falter, right? They're starting to say like, this doesn't feel right to keep, doing what we're doing when like there's, every year, every quarter, there's like another study that says like, you guys, actually, this works really well. And like, it's not, as dangerous. And, I do feel like I know this is very optimistic and whatever, but I do feel like we're kind of at the beginning phases of a possible turning of the tides. I'm not saying that everything's going to be fixed tomorrow or next month or even at the end of this year. Definitely. Like I said, it could be 20 years. I don't know. But I do feel like there is a shift and we're seeing things that we haven't seen before. And I find it very, hopeful that, some people are starting to see reason, including a couple tobacco controllers, which I think is a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know that anybody has any research on this, but my general sense is, just personally, I'm sort of shocked at the types of campaigns that we see coming out of tobacco control. And, they harken back and they take a page from a lot of,
like reefer madness. Yeah.
Drug war campaigns and so on. And it's sort of, standing in the year 2020, it to me, it's like, it's almost as ridiculous as seeing like segregated water fountains. Right. It is such an old and clearly harmful thing that I think there are a lot of people out there who don't smoke, who don't vape, don't use any tobacco, and they see the same things, and it's just kind of mind-boggling to them. Like, why are these people still living in the 40s or 50s, or why do we have to have these heavy, coercive, propaganda-driven campaigns? Can't people see through this?
Right.
So,
like, what is brain worms? What does that have to do with anything? Like that, brain worms?
I've never felt brain worms.
It's not real. I mean, if you want to talk about a parasite that exists that could, there is brain worms from vaping. This is completely divorced from reality in every sense. And yet that is what they think will be effective. And they think that is treating people with dignity. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And I will not, but I could go on a soapbox about the issues that I have with public health and their thinking that they need to essentially lie or exaggerate or whatever it is you want to call it in order to make you do what they want you to do, because I do believe they think they're trying to save us. I actually believe that. I don't think that, these people I don't think Matt Myers is sitting in a room maniacally trying to figure out how to kill people who smoke. I don't believe that. But I think he actually thinks that he knows what is best for you, and he's going to force you to do it for your own good. I think that's what they think. And we see this in other arenas of public health too, not just, tobacco control. There's this idea that like we know best. And so instead of just being honest with you and letting you take this information and make, an informed decision, I'm going to try to manipulate what you think is real so that you will then do what I want you to do. And we have seen over the past year that backfires spectacularly. And so I have issues with that.
Yeah. Well,
are we at the end?
I think we're at the Q&A, which is
okay.
Purposes the end. So I don't know if anybody in the chat has any questions. We're happy to take some. What is the most effective thing us consumers can do to help the vaping cause? From Robert Rossi Jr. Well, it's going to sound like a broken record, but reaching out, educating your lawmakers, contacting them with your concerns. For our role, we're posting up bills that need attention immediately. But it's always a good idea to share your concerns with your officials and share your story. Importantly, the folks. Someone had commented earlier about we're all just anecdotes, aren't we? Yeah, that's I guess in terms of data, true. But that whole campaign had really nothing to do with reminding people about what is useful data and what is not. It is more about marginalizing you and me and making it sound like our stories don't matter.
Right.
And I'm not one of these people that buys into this idea that enough anecdotes equals data.
Right.
Data is collected in a very specific way for a specific purpose. And that's why that, in many cases, just personal testimonials are not very useful. Doesn't mean that they're not useful. And that's why we collect them and put them on our website, and they're there for people to browse. So they're there for people to share with their lawmakers. Another project that we've, wrapped around the testimonials project is being able to sort by state. And when those stories are needed, we can kind of grab all of those and prepare them in a way that they can be handed to lawmakers, and it adds that extra human face or voice to this issue in front of officials. So certainly join CASA, make sure it's free.
Yes.
All we do is send you alerts and emails. Follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and now YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And our podcast is uploaded on SoundCloud. Logan can do the rundown of all the different app podcast stores, places where I sound like I was born in 1940.
There are links on our site. If you scroll all the way to the bottom of the site, I have these adorable little social media links, and you can find us on any of those. Just do that. I would also add to Alex's thing. Yes, join CASA. Yes, participate in calls to actions. Yes, set up meetings and make your voice heard with your elected officials. Also, I personally think that it's really important that the people in your life who care about you, to make sure that they know that this is an important issue to you, because part of the reason why, mainstream media and a lot of these guys get away with a lot of this misinformation and like regurgitating this stuff is that the regular people that Alex talked about, don't smoke, don't vape, don't really care about this, just believe that stuff. But if they know someone personally who this has saved their life, essentially, they might start feeling differently about them. And when you tell them, and it means something to them because they know you and they love you, when they see it with their mom, they might say something to their mom. And then when their mom's like, oh my God, and then this spreads, right? Think about marijuana. Think about all of these things that were taboo and then become not taboo. That's how a lot of this stuff in society changes, right? The people who use it start being like, hey, me, we're friends, and this is really important to me. And that changes people. So I think public opinion plays a huge role in this, because if public opinion shifts on these guys and people don't tolerate it anymore, that makes change also. It's just my opinion.
Yeah. And that what you were saying about someone knowing somebody who vapes and that sort of changing minds, that's what we've seen from lawmakers to, of course, someone like Cliff Douglas from the American Cancer Society. It was a family member.
Yeah, his niece, I think, right?
Go through this. Yeah, it was his niece who go through this and go back to smoking because of the regulations or because of the propaganda.
Right.
And it's unfortunate that it had to get to that point before it sort of, I think abruptly changed his mind about his action. But there are certainly plenty of lawmakers out there. We've heard about, regardless of party, there are people on staff in Congress who, they quit smoking by switching to vaping, and their boss, who is a lawmaker, knows this.
Right.
And so hopefully they still have their human parts available to them, and they can care about it. But yeah, it really is a big deal. And so it was one of the lines that I used to include on kind of what to do on calls to action. And share this with your friends and family and get them to participate too.
Yes.
It is also very helpful. So all of those things are things that we're sort of encouraging people to do on a regular basis. Certainly whenever there is an engagement that we are asking people to send a message about. But yeah, I'm not very good at this, but I assume that there are people out there who can be and who are. It's sort of whenever you read, I think, positive studies or positive articles about vaping, or you have an experience or a thought, feel free to share that with your lawmaker. I mean, even if it's something as simple as, an opinion about something that you would be able to fit into a tweet or a Facebook post, that those are important thoughts and concerns, and that is what your lawmakers are there to do. So, I think those are all really good things to keep doing.
Oh, so this question: if nicotine gum contains an addictive drug, why is it openly displayed on the shelves of stores? That is the ultimate hypocrisy of tobacco control. I think they try to use some science to sort of legitimize it, but in their mind, the fundamental answer to this question is that they have a problem with nicotine, but they see it differently when it comes from an FDA-approved cessation product from a pharma company, right? They feel that is somehow, even though it's the same nicotine, it's somehow inherently safer. And I think they also, chewing gum is, like we talked about earlier, a different delivery system than inhaling it. I think there's some of them that think that somehow that is inherently safer, but they're I add something, Alex, but like it's hypocritical. Like they'll come up with kind of things, but they just don't like vaping because it looks like smoking. I mean, that's what I would say.
It's kind of like, we could throw, kids into the mix here with a completely different substance, but, methamphetamine is a very similar thing. The methamphetamine that you buy on the street versus, Ritalin or other ADHD drugs. They're the same molecule, essentially. It's just they're different manufacturing processes and certainly different quality controls. But if the methamphetamine that was on the street was manufactured and sold in a regulated market, it would be just as safe as the prescription pills that are handed to children by people in white lab coats. So that's I think a little bit more of that's a bit more critical view of it. We can acknowledge the issues with contamination and an unsafe supply of product in the underground market versus what you get from a pharmaceutical company. Of course, they themselves have their own issues with product quality and contamination and so on. They just have the systems in place to make those recalls and send out those warnings when something like that happens.
Right.
The point there being that the drug is the same, it's just coming from different sources.
Right.
And so, the interesting thing is that we don't hear any stories about people who get hooked on nicotine gum.
Right.
And I don't honestly believe it's because people aren't feeling the effects of the nicotine. I think it's because nicotine gum just really isn't all that enjoyable. I chewed it for years. I chewed it for 3 years while I was trying to quit smoking. Technically that makes me a dual user. But I was following the FDA guidance before FDA even put the guidance out. Because I listened to other people who were successful with switching to nicotine gum. But yeah, it's hard. It makes your jaws sore. You get heartburn. It's not really like a chewing gum experience. You can only chew it a little bit and then park it, or you get problems with your jaws, which is probably what I'm going through right now because I've been chewing gum incessantly for probably 15 years. But anyway, the point of that story is that, flavors were added to nicotine gum to make them more appealing to people who smoke. But they are and well, I was going to say they're not sold and marketed the same way, but you see Nicorette ads on TV
Yeah, they
all the
kind of.
time.
Yeah,
People living their best life, that healthy, active lifestyle.
right.
Whatever. The point is that nicotine gum isn't all that enjoyable of a product, and whether it's got nicotine in it or not. I mean, think about it. What we were just talking about with the smokers' rights thing and the coercive language. It's really important that people see them as a better, more enjoyable product, and nicotine gum has never really had that advantage over cigarettes.
Exactly.
So,
are all products at vitamin stores FDA approved? I actually can speak pretty well to this because I do some work in the supplement industry. So dietary supplements are regulated by the FDA. And so the things that you see at vitamin stores are labeled as dietary supplements. If you look at the bottle, that's what it'll say. Dietary supplements are not FDA approved the way that you're probably asking the question. They don't have to go through any kind of process like a PMTA. The FDA is not looking at all of these individual products. Dietary supplements have to meet a certain set of guidelines, basically, but they're sort of, they're supposed to do that on their own. So if I want to create a dietary supplement company, right, I make my company, I pick my product. Dietary supplements have a grandfather date similar to actually tobacco products. So there is a date by which, the primary chemical or ingredient that you're using has to have been used as a dietary supplement on the market before that date. Otherwise, if it's a new ingredient, you do have a PMTA-like pathway that you have to go through. But there are a lot of things that are included in this grandfather list. And so to my knowledge, not a lot have to go through that process. So essentially, as long as check one, is this an ingredient that has been used historically for a long time? Yes. Okay. There are certain packaging requirements for your bottle, similar to vaping in some ways. You have to have, if you make anything that could even remotely be considered a health claim or anything like that, A, you're not supposed to do that. And B, if you make something sort of like that, you have to have a little label that says, this is not, approved by the FDA to treat or cure any disease. You'll see all these things, right? You have to put a list of ingredients, you have to put, how they are a percentage of daily, recommended vitamin, whatever. You have to put, all of the ingredients, the nutritional information, plus ingredients. There's things that you have to follow, but no, you don't have to call FDA and go, hi, I'd like to make a new dietary supplement. Can you look at my stuff? You can just, as long as you follow these rules, you just pop up and make one on your own. That's pretty much it. And there is a similar process by which if they catch you, making health claims, people going around saying lion's mane cures cancer. You can't do that. And you will get a warning letter just like you do, as a vaping company. But other than that, that's pretty much it. So yes and no. I mean, honestly, I would love it if vaping could be under that sort of, because it's regulated, but it's not like approval based, if that makes sense. There's no application unless it's new. I that's a dream I have for us. That's a dream I also have for cannabis and CBD products. I hope that they could fit into, and there's people trying to do that. But that I think is kind of the best of both worlds. Like you definitely cannot do this, but as long as you follow these rules, we're good. There's your education on dietary supplements.
That was good. I the whole time I kept thinking it's product standards, right? I mean, that's what I think that's what a lot of us have been asking for since the deeming rule was proposed. That product standards are a much better way to do this. I don't know that anybody's going to be comfortable with just kind of leaving the industry to kind of figure it out on their own. I know one of the problems with dietary supplements that because it's not necessarily so strictly inspected or regulated, a lot of times you're not getting what you think you're getting.
That's true.
In terms of dose.
That's true.
And I know that there was some research done on that many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But that's one of those kind of quality control things that I think, I don't know that the vapor industry gets away without having to go through some sort of authorization process. But the main argument here is that process needs to be more accessible.
Right.
And, I think if the agency can come up with a list of ingredients that we know the toxicity and how these interact with other ingredients and so on.
Right.
This is just a ton of work that needs to be done,
right?
But it can be done, and those product standards, I think, can be established and made it almost kind of in the spirit of open source. If you can look at a list of ingredients and say, okay, I can use this, I can combine this with that, I can make this flavor, and I can sell it in this concentration, this concentration, this concentration of nicotine. That's going to be, I think, relatively easy for people to do. Those are standards that are accessible to people, and we can maybe, hopefully, at some point get back to having that variety of products that we know is really successful.
Right. No, I completely agree with that. And that's essentially what happens, in some ways with dietary supplements, right? There's a list. And if the thing that you want to make is on the list, you're good to go. You know what I mean? And FDA does still find things like there have been dietary supplement ingredients that have popped up. A lot of it was in like sports enhancement issues stuff. I can't remember the name, but one of them was like phenibut or something. I can't remember, but it turns out maybe we should not, so they amend the list. They're like, actually, we discovered this one's super bad, so nobody's allowed to use this one anymore. And you have to stop, they're able to, continue to monitor the situation and make updates, and, the market will respond. There's no reason that I feel like they can't do that with vaping. Yeah. It's just my 2 cents.
So I'm not sure I can answer this question from Breeze Tones. How confident are you both about the UK, Public Health England versus WHO in November? What's the battle?
Yeah, I mean, I know they're butting heads. I think, wasn't there an article that we were looking at? I feel like I need more context. I'm not good with international stuff. I will be the first one to tell you that. Like we said earlier, the US already has 50 states and then hundreds and hundreds of cities. I don't always look at international. I know that there were butting heads, right? There were some MPs or health people or something in the UK that like wrote a letter or something to WHO, and they were like, you're dumb on vaping. Like, I feel confident that the UK public health guys are not going to back down. I don't know if they're going to change WHO, but I don't feel worried personally that there's going to be some sort of backsliding or avalanche or whatever that's going to happen with vaping in the UK. I feel like they've got their stuff. I don't know that they're going to be able to do anything about the WHO, and I don't know all the politics about that, but I don't know. I feel like I'm not worried.
Yeah, I again will admit my ignorance over what may be happening in November. I know that there was talk about revisiting the 20 milligram per milliliter limit. I'm sure there are tons of people in Europe who would like that to change, and certainly the UK.
They were talking about getting rid of it, aren't they? Because when Brexit makes them leave the TPD, right? And so they're like making their own something.
Yeah, so I think that's the context here. It's a general question, but the Brexit situation about how the UK won't be under EU guidelines, so maybe we'll be able to present different arguments very badly, whereas that's okay.
I think that's happening. Yeah,
I know that these are discussions and debates. I think Clive Bates may have sort of worked to temper people's expectations about this recently or last year, saying this is not going to be an immediate change. But I do know that the limitations on bottle size and nicotine concentration it's this huge bone of contention. It needs to change. And so I think the UK is going to be the first Europe, but not European country to do something like that. And,
right.
And I can only say I hope they're successful.
Same.
Yeah.
I mean, if everything goes epically bad, we'll just pick up and go to the UK. I mean, that's my like parachute plan, right? Like if the plane is going down on fire and has exploded, I'm just going to run to the UK.
You're going to run? You're going to run across the ocean?
I mean, I might, like the speed of my passion, I feel like could carry me. You know what I'm saying? No, I'm just kidding. But bless the UK. That's all I have to say.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions?
Just reading this. The WHO wants the UK to ban vaping. WHO wants to ban all kinds of things.
I mean, WHO is a toddler. They want all kinds of things. Doesn't mean they're gonna get them.
Doesn't mean it goes away.
Right.
It just makes it more dangerous. So
Yeah.
if that's your goal, then by all means. So unless we got any other questions, we have gone to almost an hour and a half here. And I think that'll wrap it up. You got anything else to add, Danielle?
You guys spread the word about, I know I'm not on this, podcast every week or anything like that. So, hey, but really tell your friends, share this around on social media, do us a favor. I really think that, a lot more people should know about a lot of these issues and maybe don't. I cannot tell you how hardcore it breaks my heart when I still see people going like, what vape mail ban? Like that kills me. Please do your part to spread the word. Alex and Logan do an amazing job, as you guys know, because you're here watching it. So, this is valuable information. Please, please, please tell everybody and subscribe, ring the bell, do the things.
So we do have one more question about the shipping ban and how it's affected UPS, FedEx, and DHL. Which is that those companies enacted their own policies. They were not directed by Congress to do that. They voluntarily did it. They voluntarily complied with an idiotic rule.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds like there's a shortage of batteries out there. Is this the excitement over electric vehicles, or are these shippers pretending that rechargeable batteries are automatically linked to vaping?
I don't have a 100% concrete answer for you, but I feel really sure that batteries are not exclusive. Even lithium-ion 18650s are not exclusive to this industry. And I do not believe that FedEx and UPS, if you were solely a battery company, if you're a vape company selling batteries, you're probably going to have a problem shipping. But if you're a straight battery company, I don't think that there should be an issue there personally. I could be wrong about that, but I think that FedEx, UPS, those guys are not going to have an issue with that because it's so many industries, use these kinds of batteries. If there's a shortage, I mean, I've had for like the better part of a year or so, I've had trouble on most of the websites that I look at seeing batteries way before the ban. I'm wondering if this could be a supply issue related to COVID. I mean, if you've shopped for furniture in the last 12 months, there is a massive furniture shortage because all of the materials that everybody is trying to get to build furniture, COVID has screwed a lot of things up. My guess is that it is related more to that and the virus than it is to the ban, because I saw shortages like even before this. So that's my 2 cents on that.
I grabbed a story from a media company that's really horrible about tobacco stuff, but it does look like, according to CNBC, whose parent company, I believe, actually has as a matter of policy the encouragement to stigmatize all things tobacco.
Joy.
The U.S. is facing a lithium-ion battery shortage as electric vehicle production ramps up, which is also weird because we're in the middle of a semiconductor shortage. So I'm not quite clear. Oh, look at all of those cells, all of those beautiful cells, just waiting to end up in your mod or your Tesla.
Or your flashlight. I mean,
or your flashlight.
But yeah, I don't think it's related to this, honestly. I really, really don't. I think it's other things because I just don't.
Yeah. We're having some globally issues with inputs into different industries, and so that's hopefully these things start to balance out soon. But coming out of a pandemic, issues with supply chain, I think we're going to be seeing for a while.
Yeah, try to find anything from the Besta collection on IKEA. That's like, you could get $1 million for that stuff right now. They've been out for, try it. Try to find a Besta cabinet on IKEA. I dare you. Okay. I just moved, so we were buying lots of furniture, and it was really infuriating. It's not just this. It's a lot of stuff. Somebody said, like, wet cat food in the chat, having issues getting that. The weirdest stuff you can't get because weird supply chain issues.
Yeah. And, not least among them, sometimes the truth is hard to come by, which is what we're trying to do. You like that? You see what I did there?
I see you.
So with that, thank you again for the excellent question. And it was good. I don't buy vape stuff anymore. I snooze now. So I am just not dialed into what's what the sort of in the store issue people are facing. So thank you. That was a good question, and I'm glad to learn something new.
Yep.
All that having been said, thank you, Danielle, for joining us joining me on what Logan's here. He's just in the background. But thank you for joining us
to Logan
on this podcast. We'll have to do this again, I'm sure, because one of these weekends I'm going to want to not be here. And so
I'm the understudy, guys.
In no way is Danielle the understudy. She is the president of the board of CASA and a very valuable member of our organization. So thank you for joining us, and we'll just probably have you back on randomly because it's fun to have you here.
You guys should tune in because you'll never know when I'm gonna pop up. So you need to watch every week. Okay.
Yep. There you go. So with that, again, what do we got? Smash that subscribe button. Click the like button and destroy.
Follow the instructions on your screen. See the bell? See that all? Then you're done. It's so easy.
Follow the bouncing mouse cursor.
Yep.
And you can find this podcast. I don't know how immediately it's uploaded to YouTube, but for those of you who joined in late, this will be up shortly on YouTube if you'd like to watch the whole thing. Logan also works some magic on this and puts this up on all the podcast places where you get your podcasts,
right?
Including SoundCloud.
Yes.
And so, follow CASA on social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram @CASA Media. And I know I'm forgetting something else, but that's
join your local state Facebook group.
There we go. Join your local state Facebook group. Kristen Noel-Marsh went to a lot of trouble to put all those together. And she also manages all the volunteer moderators that keep those places a clean, family-friendly place for people to go learn about tobacco harm reduction. And of course, anything that we get that's specific to your state or municipality, we will post them in there. Not always a full-blown call to action. Sometimes it's just a news article, and that's the most heads up you're going to get 24 hours before a hearing. So we try to keep that information flowing as much as we can, but you got to join the state groups if you want to get in on it. So with that having been said, I think we've covered all the closing thoughts and then some. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you back here again next week. Same CASA time, same CASA channel.
Yep.
Thank you all very much.
Bye.